projection of our unconscious, that we're afraid that the gods want to do us down. So we invent the story that Ea scattered our languages, whereas in fact I think anthropology tells us that the history of language is because we've roamed around the earth a lot, and the Australian Aborigines parted from Africa 50, 60,000 years ago, and their language has evolved on that long trek, and now in situ in Australia for 40,000 years. So it's evolved its own vocabulary and grammar, whereas the people in Finland or the Celts or the American Indians, they've all evolved their own thing. What I've tried to do in my book, The Kabbalah Runes, is trace the original components of speech. I think there is enough traces to show that originally there wasn't, not exactly a unified language, unlike here, but a kind of a similar conceptual thought world in which language was first forming, which I've explained in my book, The Kabbalah Runes, which is here, which everyone should have a copy of, my most important book, along with all the others. Ea, why would he? I think I'm kind of with Feuerbach on this. I think that what was happening is that consciousness is differentiating and trying to find a reason why we all speak different languages. It must have been the gods causing trouble. I don't know. I suspend judgment. I don't believe that. I think that the gods are good and want us to speak the same language. And I think I've said before that the formation myth of Druidry, the reason I'm a Druid, one of many reasons, is because in the Druid history of the story of Phineas Farsaith, who founded the first Druid Academy, he was there when he was in the plain of Shinar when they were building the Tower of Babel, and he saw there be trouble. So he founded the first Druid Academy to keep alive the knowledge of the unity of all languages. That's what Druidry is. It's a language school dedicated to the unity of all speech, which can mean telepathically, in my opinion. Now that's the foundational myth of what Druids are for, which I think is really interesting. So in spite of the shenanigans of any gods out there that are causing trouble, I think we humans are entitled to know the good news of our unity, which is what I think Hegel was trying to say as well. By the way, he came from Stuttgart, which is a very druidical part of Europe. Around Stuttgart on the Rhine, they found tumuli and all kinds of Druid remains. And 3 is the sacred number of Druidry, and that was the sacred number of Hegel's dialectic. So there we are. Ea. Anyway, there's a lot more to read about him. Fascinating stuff. Any questions? He had a consort, and they've discovered him in Ebla, another city, which is in Syria. So I really hope we can get peace in Syria and get archaeology back in there, and stop blowing up stuff. Yes. Okay. Right, now it's my turn, yeah? So we come to the Knight of Fire, Luch, who is the Druid god. One of my favourites of all the Druid gods. He's amazing. He gave his name to Lyon, which is sacred to Luch, and if you've not been to Lyon, put it on your things to do before you die list. It's a beautiful city, and it's at the confluence of 2 great rivers, the Rhone and the Saône, and there's this marvellous hilltop that overlooks them all, which has now got a great basilica, sacred, and it's got a museum for Gallo-Roman society because it was the capital of Gaul, long before Paris became important. And it's named after Luch. He's the Lord of Light, and his name means light. And
may I interrupt?
Sure, yeah.
Today is every year they make the Festival of Light in Lyon.
In Lyon, yes.
It's December 8th each year.
It's happening today, then?
Yeah.
Well, there's a divine synchronicity. Yeah, yeah. That was something I was going to say. Is Lyon is the city of light, and it's where the cinema industry comes from, because the Lumiere brothers, who were called the Light brothers, Lumiere,
Yeah.
invented cinema and modern films, and they made the first films in Lyon, late 19th century. And yes, I did know about this Festival of Light. I didn't know it was happening today, 8th of December. That's a synchronicity in action, isn't it? Have you been to it ever?
Yes, once.
What happens? What's it like?
The people, they put lights on their balcony.
Yeah.
So all the city, you have some candles,
Okay.
and also the town try to make some light up on bridges, on buildings.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And do they have, because there's a big theatre there, isn't there, an old Roman theatre. Do they have a performance or something?
I cannot say.
You don't remember that bit?
I didn't.
Because in the
went to
summer
see-
they have plays and concerts and
Yeah.
operas, and rock concerts and things. Well, I'll look it
It's a-
up.
But it's maybe not Lyon, but next city very close is called Vienna, which has
Vienne, yeah.
yes, famous
Theatre as well.
theatre outside Roman theatre.
So, a fun fact you may not know is that when Augustus, who was the great emperor who brought the Pax Augustus and created a Rome people could believe in, he he changed the name of the Celtic name for the month of August, which is Lughnasadh. It was named after Lugh, the god of light, because it's August, right? He said, no, I want to call that after me, Augustus. And that's why we talk about August.
Okay.
But in the Gaelic language of Ireland and Scotland, they still call it Lughnasadh. They kept the old name, right? Because they were outside the empire. And he went to Lyon and gave a public speech announcing this change. On the 1st of August, he said, hello folks, I'm your emperor. Sorry about this, I'm going to pinch the name. And from now on it's called Augustus, or August. And everyone thought that he was Lugh, come to earth, the Lord of Light, become the emperor, sort of divinized. So he played along with that, and dressed up and, acted the part. And I think this became part of the foundational mythology of the Roman Empire, that he was Lugh, he was the Lord of Light, and he was the sun god, effectively. And the Romans liked Lugh because they said he was Apollo. Lugh is the Celtic version of Apollo, who is the sun god. And Apollo was the deity that the Roman emperors worshipped as their favourite god. And of course Apollo had the 9 muses, as he was their choir master. And he was the god of creativity, music, beauty, art, but also healing, medicine, and prophecy. So Apollo is a pretty amazing god, and these Romans were not stupid. They adopted him, although he's a Greek god. They said, well, we'll have him, and they built a temple to him in Rome. And I think Augustus liked Apollo, and that's why he liked Lugh. He said, so there was a debate, is he Lugh, is he Apollo, who is he, And then, just at that time, being born in Galilee was baby Jesus, well, in Bethlehem. And so this idea of incarnating the Lord of Light was shifted from the emperor, because Augustus's descendants were very naughty, Tiberius, Caligula, they lost the plot, right? And instead it descended upon baby Jesus. I think that's how the Celts of France would have seen it, So there's a bit of a background to this. Lugh becomes the Lord of Light, which incarnates as the emperor, but then becomes the god of the poor, born in a stable, for the homeless, for the unemployed, for the people with no power and wealth. And that's quite druidical, that shift. And that's why we have, final point, this stone of Luke in the local church at Toussaint Croix. There was a temple there in old days to Luke. And when the Christians arrived and the Gauls became Christians, they said, fine, it's a continuation. We now worship Jesus as Luke. He's the Lord of light, because he's on the side of the common people. And he's still doing the same love impetus. So that's part of what the card says, I think, is we have to get a win-win for history, and we have to all incarnate this divine light principle, whether we're rich or poor, or, this is the trouble with the Elon Musk type approach, which is only the top rich people can enter the kingdom of God. No, the whole point is the little people too, because we're all made in the image of God. And then final point, last thing about Lou, which I love, my favourite thing about Lou, when I went to Ireland and was taught this stuff by the Druids, the great story of Lou is that he is, he's the polymath. He doesn't just do one thing. So he's a Hegelian. He does art, he does logic, he does philosophy, he does music, he does dance, everything, right? And initially, when he comes to Tara, the seat of the gods, Tuatha Dé Danann, they won't let him in because he's not a specialist. And the doorkeeper keeps saying, we only let people in that have got something they can do. Like, what's your PhD in? And he does everything, it turns out. And each time the doorkeeper says, no, you can't come in, we've got people in there that do that. And eventually Lou sends in the doorkeeper to the gods and says, look, go in and ask, is there anyone in there that can do them all? And of course there isn't. And that's when they realise he is actually a god. And so I call this the Lou complex. The trouble with education nowadays is that it forces you to specialise. Either an engineer or an artist or, a philosopher or a historian or whatever. You have to do the one track thing. Whereas Lou stands outside that system. He stands for omniscience and polydextrous access to all knowledge. He would love the table. This is, I devised this at the Castle of the Muses in the Celtic world, and in Dorset, where I was teaching. So it's an homage to that multi-disciplinary approach, which I think the greatest minds on the planet now realise we have to have. It's the specialists that have screwed us up. We need. That's why we need philosophers to integrate everything into a whole. So thank you, Lou. We love you, and that's what light does. Behind everything is light. So. Yes. Yeah. He was a master of crane knowledge. He had a crane bag, which used to belong to Manannán mac Lir, the sea god, who helped raise him as his foster child. And every year here in La Creuse, we see the grue, the cranes flying overhead, going south, and in the winter and then coming north in the spring. That crane knowledge is what Lou is a specialist in as well. Because this Druid knowledge is very much in touch with nature, the seasons, the sun, the moon. And Les Grues, at least 20,000 birds can fly over in a single afternoon in a V formation here. They know this, what I'm talking about. Amazing animals. Right. Okay, well, there we've got two lovely cards, Ea and Lou, to guide us today. So let us say thank you, and let us pray for peace.